Hi, everybody. Dr. John Flucke. Welcome to the Technology Evangelist podcast, sponsored by Medidenta Digital. And today I have the great pleasure of talking to someone who, if you know 3D printing or implants any bit at all, you know this name, you probably know the face, you've probably seen him or heard him. A great guy, he's got tons of knowledge, Dr. Rick Ferguson. Rick, thank you for coming on the podcast with me.
Thank you, John. I followed your work for many, many years, your publications and all your work in dentistry, and of course, more recently in digital dentistry as well. So it's an absolute pleasure to meet you and, to have this talk with you today. I'm excited to share whatever I can and learn from you as well.
Well, I don't know how much you can learn from me, but I'll do my best. How about that? The way I always try and start off, Rick, is kind of with an origin story. So kind of what got you into dentistry and, what got you down the path to where you are now. I think people like to hear exactly how people like yourself got to the point that you are now.
So I got into dentistry, like a lot of people. I was pre-med. When I got
Mhm.
to the University of Florida, I started um, volunteering at the hospital, and of course the dental school there in Gainesville, Florida, where we have Shands Hospital. And I did rotations through the different hospital departments, and one of them was oral surgery and the dental clinic. And I just fell in love with it, decided this is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to, I liked working with my hands. I was always a tinkerer, taking things apart, putting them back together. And that's how I got into dentistry. After I graduated dental school, I did a residency at University of Miami, which was focused on implants. We did a lot of implants, a lot of surgery. At the University of Miami, there's no dental school, and there's an oral surgery department, and I did a GPR residency under that department. And it was a lot of trauma surgery, a lot of dentistry, of course, but we got good surgical experience. I stayed on there as a part-time faculty member, and for about 20 years, would
Wow.
go down there and supervise the clinics and give lectures to the residents. So I stayed there for a while. Of course, opened a private practice, and fast forward to about 2014. We started out, of course, with no digital technology.
Right.
We had film X-rays and stone models, and didn't even have really, when I started the practice in 1997, we didn't have even computerized books. Everything was done on paper.
Yeah, the old
But
pegboard and spreadsheet stuff.
exactly, yeah, because now my wife joined the practice about 4 years later, 4 or 5 years later. She was actually my dental school classmate, but had gone on to join the military after dental school, Army dentist. And excuse me, interesting is we never dated until after all of that. So then she came down and joined the practice, and then we moved our practice to a new location, slightly smaller office, still small space compared to the practices they have these days. We have 1,500 square feet, 3.5 operatories, not designed for digital dentistry. We opened
Right.
that practice in 2010, moved the practice to that location. And 2014 or so, I got back into digital technology with 3D printing. I had learned about 3D printers in high school. I was a total geek into computers, built my own computers. Still today, every computer in our office I built myself. But I learned about 3D printing in high school. It was very expensive. There were
Oh, yeah.
patents on everything for many years. And 2014 or so, Formlabs released their printer that changed the world, really, because they had the first SLA printer
Mhm.
that was reasonable cost. I had been using FDM to do surgical guides.
Yeah.
We had been running an implant program at the University of Florida, which we still do. We're in our 18th year doing that program now. So that starts up next month. It's a 6 weekend program that we run, and it's a live surgery program. Any U.S. licensed dentist can come down and do surgeries under our supervision. So the
That's
university,
really cool.
Yeah, it's unique in the country in that it's the only university-based program where dentists can come from any U.S. state, as long as they have a dental license that in whatever state they're practicing in, and come to University of Florida Clinic near St. Petersburg, Florida, and we do surgeries, we do digital dentistry, we teach everything. But the idea is we've been running that program since 2007, and we wanted to go into the digital realm. So prior to 2014, I'd tinkered with FDM printers, and we
Mhm.
had started making surgical guides. I found a company in England that made a really nice printer called the Cell Robox that was simple enough for even dentists to use. you know, so I actually flew to London and got them to carry a filament that we could use in the mouth to make surgical guides. And then a couple of years later, Formlabs came out with their printer, and we adopted that quickly, and tinkered with other non-dental, consumer level printers.
Mhm.
And fast forward now, we've created, we have an entire industry in dentistry, related to 3D printing. And Medidenta is a big part of that. In between all of that, I saw a need to um, bring a low cost alternative for dentists who just wanted to get in to do surgical guides, maybe
Mhm.
temporaries and things like that. And I had started a dental 3D printing group called the Dental 3D Printing Group in Facebook. And right now we're at over 43,000 members worldwide.
I was going to say the traffic on that thing is incredible. So kudos to
Yeah,
you for that.
thank you. It's a labor of love. There's a lot of work involved in that.
Yes.
But we've certainly grown, and even at the beginning I could see that it had an international flair to it. So about
Mhm.
80% of the members are in the US, but most, and then the rest are from, you know uh, Europe, Canada, Australia, and the rest of the world. So I saw that, there was a need to have a low cost 3D printing alternative for dentists because, in the US, dentists can afford, a $5,000 printer or a
Right.
$10,000 printer, depending on their needs. But the rest of the world really can't. So I took a particular off the shelf printer and got some modification parts and, created. I started posting them on the Facebook group, and
Mhm.
people were like, "Hey, can you make these for us? We don't have the ability to do
Yeah.
this stuff. We don't want to do this. Can you just do it?" So I created, a side business called Ferguson 3D Printing Accessories, um, and for the last 4 years, that's taken a lot of my time, sleepless nights. We started doing our own manufacturing of the parts in
Wow.
Fort Lauderdale, and we have about 3,000 users around the world. We're using all of these parts to take a low cost 3D printer that you can buy on Amazon. Right now it's about $230 for that printer, and then on top of that, to make it a truly dental product, I worked with several 3D printer resin manufacturers so that they would validate the resins to make, again, sure that they're safe for clinical use. Pacdent being one of them, they make the
Mhm.
Rodan line of resins. I see you have some of their resins there. And eventually, Medidenta showed interest in buying that business from me. So we recently sold that business to Medidenta, and they're now carrying those parts with the knowledge that, we will continue to make the parts affordable,
Mhm.
and I'll continue to support, those parts and develop new products as well, that they're going to carry. So it's taken some of the load off of me,
Mhm.
as far as having to run the manufacturing, run a clinical practice, run education courses,
Right.
and all that. And we're also doing some courses with Medidenta as well, which also helps relieve some of that pressure, because my passion is, of course, digital dentistry and 3D printing, but initially, and where we still are, is with implants. We
Mhm.
teach our implant continuum. We can take a dentist who's never had any experience with implants and make them, comfortable doing implants in their practice, as well as dentists who want to go to that next level, learn the digital aspects of it. We do full arch, cases in the course. Every year we do about 7 full arch cases, and everything is planned out in the course. They get to plan the case, print surgical guides. We also work with a company that will design and make the surgical guides for us, just because of the
Nice.
volume involved
Yes.
in the program. Um, but we also teach a full day on how to design their own guides. So we can take dentists who are already doing implants and take them to the next level. If they want to learn bone grafting, sinus grafting, we do all of that in the course. And we do it the right way, I believe, in that we give the didactic and the hands-on
Hmm.
and keep it to the level of a university program as to how people should be doing it in their practice. We're not taking any shortcuts. And I think that's why after 18 years, we still are, we're at the university, we're, guests in their house basically, but we've
Right.
done things properly, I think, in the way that a university level program should be. So we're very proud of it. That's kind of the story right now where we are. Uh, you know, it's been an incredible journey. I have to say, dentistry has been a very fulfilling career for me and my wife Kathy, and yeah, so that's where we are now. My wife Kathy took a job teaching at the University of British Columbia Dental School, so we recently relocated. I recently relocated here. She's been here about 2 years, and I've been traveling back and forth. So we're working with to get settled here a little bit right now. That's where we are. I'll be traveling back and forth to the U.S., of course, to see patients, scale back clinical days.
Sure.
Um, I have an associate who's going to be buying our practice, so that's very helpful. And she took our implant continuum, and we have all the digital technology there. We have 3D printers, we have scanners, we have photogrammetry, we have milling. We can mill custom abutments, full arch zirconia, everything. And she really 3 years out of dental school. I'm so proud of her, Dr. Lily Shu, and she's doing everything that I was doing. You know, she's doing full arch cases, and I don't even have to be there. And I'm so proud of her. She's very adept at all the digital stuff. So very,
Kind of
very proud.
reminds me, I can't remember the razor company, but like probably in the 90s or so, there was a razor company and the CEO would say like, I loved it so much, I bought the company. And
Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember
that's
that
quite a,
commercial. Yeah,
yeah, it's quite
yeah,
a compliment to you that somebody comes in and learns from you, watches you work, and then says, hey, you interested in having me come in? And that's a great story. And you're passing it on, the knowledge that you've got. And the other thing I think that a lot of people don't realize, they go on the Facebook group and they see you and you're on there a bunch, and they don't probably have quite the comprehension of exactly how much and how much time you're doing. I always say that dentistry is a strange profession if you're not in it, because it's one of the few places in the world where it's kind of like a factory. There's a product that comes out at the end of the day, only the guy that runs, GM, he's not down on the assembly line putting screws into the cars all day. And we kind of
right.
have to do it all. We've got to run the
Yeah,
company and make the products. And so
yeah,
the time investment, I completely get where you're coming from with that, because yeah, it can be a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of late hours. And
yeah.
not only are you doing
So,
all that, but you're inventing stuff like the Ferguson plate, for crying out loud.
well, again, I tried to make it so that, like I said earlier, simple enough that a dentist can
Mhm.
use it, and certainly for dental assistants. So we have all the settings and everything. Going back to Dr. Shu for a second, you
Sure.
mentioned, passing that on, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of DSO dentistry being done these days, and a lot of
Right.
new grads coming out. And there's nothing wrong with that. It has a place in our profession, but I didn't want to sell to a DSO. I wanted to
Right.
sell a practice to a dentist that would keep it going,
Hmm.
doing things the way we liked it, and we've been doing it for years, take care of the patients, but also had that passion. And I still think that's possible today. and can be very, very fulfilling for the dentist and certainly profitable as well. So it's about patient care always.
Hmm.
I got into doing 3D printing with the surgical guides because I wanted to do better surgery, more
Yeah.
precise surgery, right?
Yep.
Same thing with 3D printing other things, dentures and restorations and
Mhm.
full arch. When we're doing full arch now, after we put the implants in, we do a photogrammetry scan and we're able to deliver within an hour a prosthesis to the patient that they go home with teeth.
That's
And
beautiful.
it's actually better clinically because the implants are going to be better stabilized through cross
Right.
arch stabilization. The patient can function to some degree on that. We don't have to see that. We don't have to take that prosthesis out for about 5 months, and then go to a final restoration. So overall, it's better patient care as well, and we're able to do that with all these resins and current technologies such as photogrammetry, intraoral scans, merging all of these technologies together.
So let me ask you this, because you are by far and away an expert in 3D printing. And I know that printers run the gamut from, as you said earlier, you said, there's low end and then there's the high precision ones that you can spend some money on. Can you tell me, basically, in your opinion, what the difference is between, like, if a doctor is thinking of getting into this, they're trying to make the decision and they're looking, and it's hard without hands-on experience to be able to know these kind of things. What, in your opinion, is really the difference between the low-end printers and the more expensive ones that are kind of, air quotes, dental specific?
Yeah. So you can buy an off-the-shelf printer and you can tinker and figure out the settings. There are
Right.
many, many hundreds of hours involved in that. Okay. And I don't recommend that these days. Early on, when we didn't have, the plethora of dental printers that we have now,
Right.
I would show people how to do that. I frankly don't think that's worth your time these days to
Hmm.
do that. But you can also start off with a low end printer like the one that I developed the plate for, the mini 8KS printer from Frozen. I truly consider that a dental printer these days because we've done the homework. A dental printer manufacturer is going to figure out the settings to get that printer to print reliably, right? To get the
Yeah.
to print accurately. So I actually have done that for that one particular printer, right? That doesn't translate to other low end printers, right? But
Right.
actually, the quality that you can get from that is pretty high. The resolution on that printer, for example, is 22 microns on the X and Y. It just so happens that the consumer level printers, in some ways, have actually leapfrogged in technology because of the turnover that they have.
Right.
Whereas dental printers, you're buying something that is going to have a lot more R&D investment in it, and
Mhm.
sometimes by the time the design and manufacturing cycle comes around, that product is actually outdated.
Yeah.
When compared to some of the consumer level products as technology changes. What you are getting from a higher level dental printer is you're getting company support for one thing, right? They're also going to have convenience features. They're going to have Wi-Fi, for
Right.
example, heating systems built in to heat the resin to the proper temperature for reliability. Some of the things you should be looking for. You're going to also have the proper post-curing settings in their post-cure machines so that the resin is safe to use in the patient's mouth, right? You're going to have things like Wi-Fi, right? Whereas on some of the low-end printers, you have to transfer the files with a USB stick.
Right.
You know, it technically it is wireless, but it's not Wi-Fi, right?
I
And
call it
I even
sneaker net because you got to walk around with the drive,
Right,
yeah.
right. Now, actually, what I did was I actually created a little box. I don't sell it. I've given a few people this box, but it's a box that you can make that low end printer wired too, so you don't have to do the sneaker
That's
thing.
nice. Yeah.
It's a little switch that switches, and I've actually networked it to about 4 printers in our practice. So when we send the file to the printer, we're basically writing the file to the USB stick on the printer. It stays on the printer, and you just flip a little switch, and all the printers show up in Windows Explorer as printer
Right.
one, printer two, and that's another thing. When you buy a printer, um, the ease of use of transferring from one material to the next,
Right.
right? So some of the printers have a cartridge system, for example, like the
Hmm.
Formlab printer, which dumps the resin, and the printer knows which vat is in
Right.
there, which resin goes into that vat, and which resin is in the cartridge, and that makes it easier as well. One of the easiest systems out there to use, frankly, sort of the Apple iPhone
Yeah.
of 3D printing, and that's what you're getting from that particular dental printer, right? Is the ease of use that you're going to get, the convenience that when you take the vat out and you put a new vat in, the printer knows which resin is in that vat. So you don't end up mixing resins up and things like
Right.
that.
Or having to
On some of
clean
the
in
lower end,
vats and all
yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
exactly. On some of the lower end printers, you have to manually fill the resin in the vat.
Right.
Some of the high end ones too. I mean, on a Sprint Ray Pro 2, you're going to have to fill the vat manually.
Yeah.
But it does keep track of what's in that vat once it's been used, so the ease of use of switching out things like that. So for example, if we're using one of the lower end printers like the Mini 8KS, it's actually convenient just because of the price point. A full
Right.
setup like that with the Ferguson accessories will run you about $1,000, including price of the printer. You know, you can literally just use that one printer and never change the resin. Just print surgical guides on that one printer, for example, right? Print, denture-based resin on another
Yeah.
setup like that, if you have the space, obviously. Whereas the dental printers, the price points on those are much higher, so it's not practical to get a printer for each resin. But they do make it a little bit easier to switch out the vats. But you still
Well,
have to switch out the vats. It's another step.
right.
So yeah.
I think
So
one of the things that I love about you that I'm hearing is that because I'm the same way, which is probably why I love it, but you're a tinkerer.
yep,
And sometimes, like I always say you learn a lot more from failure than you do from success because success, especially in dentistry, we just think, oh, it's supposed to be good. We're supposed to be
right.
the best. And then when it's not, but anyway, but when you make a mistake as a tinkerer, I'll tinker with something, I don't know, sometimes for weeks before I actually like, okay, I think I'm ready to go to the mouth. But
Yeah.
with people like you and I, we can do we do a lot of tinkering, and then people don't realize sometimes that things, like a dental specific printer, that basically the engineers and sometimes people like you and I have tinkered with in the background for a long, long time to make them, so easy to use so that people don't have to try and, have their failures so that they can go on and have successes.
Yeah.
And I, I mean,
Uh,
I think it's cool how you took something that was inexpensive and then you made the accessories for it, all that thing, and then you're trying to make it easy for everybody else, which I think is incredibly noble, and it's pretty cool. I want to touch base just real quick too on the whole thing of your practice and selling your practice, which is um, the lady dentist that owns my practice now, I sold a couple of years ago, and I work for her now. A lot less stressful. Um,
yeah.
she when I sold it, she's the daughter of one of my very best friends. And she went to dental school. I've known her since probably she was in junior high. And I had a couple of friends kind of poke me a little bit and say, you could have sold it to a DSO for more money. And
Yeah.
I probably could have, but my answer to that is, like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dentist from the time I was 3. I was just drawn to it.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to have my own office and call my own shots and be able to, do what I wanted to do. And that was her dream too. And so if I just sell my dream for a couple extra dollars, what happens to the other people's dreams?
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool that you've done that you've passed along your knowledge, your passion, your love of it to somebody that has the same knowledge, passion, and love. And not only are they getting their dream, but that the people in the practice are also getting, what's best for them or what you want for them, even though at some point in time you won't be there. I think that's a really noble thing, Rick, and I salute that.
Well, I actually think the two things are related. The fact that we're tinkerers and we
Hmm.
share that same passion and want to pass that passion on.
Yeah.
I think it's related to a word that gets thrown around a lot these days, and that's freedom, right?
Hmm.
The freedom to be your own boss in dentistry, right? And to pass on that level of freedom to another clinician is fantastic, but also the tinkerer part of it, right? When I got started in 3D printing, there weren't these dental printers out there.
Right.
So I wanted the freedom and of being able to make a surgical guide, you know, not even the cost, but certainly we can do it for a lot lower cost, but also just the freedom to be able to do it very quickly, the turnaround times and things like that, and do it, if not same day, the next day, right? So it's that freedom that I wanted, why I tinker, you know,
Yep.
we're always evaluating and reevaluating our processes and thinking, can we do this better? Can we do this faster? Can we do this more economically? And look, let's be frank, a lot of times the answer is no, right?
Right.
But at least we're pushing those boundaries, but it goes back to that freedom. And, we're losing some of that in our profession, I think, because
Agreed.
we're not passing that on to the younger generation. And it's not to say that, again, there's anything wrong with it. Some people just don't want the stress of running a practice. Some people
Right.
don't want, to be their own boss, frankly.
Yeah.
I still like that concept, you know. Um, to me, it's also more fun, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It one of
sure.
the one of the phrases that it really sets me on edge when people say it is if you ask somebody, why are you doing it like that? And the answer is, well, that's because that's the way we've always done it.
Right.
And the only way, excuse me, that we make progress is to say, why are we doing it that way? And isn't there a better way? And you and I, we found the 3D printing realm, and we think that's a better way. Um, let's talk for a second about design, because you talked about the early days dental specific printers. I remember um, this will be a little geeky, but I know you'll get it. So maybe some other people have to do a Google search. But when the ADA was in Washington, D.C., the last time, I'm not even sure when that was. Um, that was the first time that I'd seen a dental specific 3D printer. And the stuff that they were showing that they created was amazing. And I asked them, what's the design process? And I remember one of the companies, they had a laptop and they pulled open Blender, which,
Right.
is like as you know, a design program for like engineers and,
Hmm.
people that are getting degrees in additive manufacturing. And I was like, oh my gosh. But in the last, 3 years or so, we've seen such advancements on the design side of this stuff that it's really easy to do. And one of the things I like to scream from the mountaintops is if you're like me and you saw printers, in the mid-teens, it's completely different now. I mean, it's so much easier, so much faster, so much better. You want to talk a little bit about design?
So, yeah, that's to answer a previous question also, what sets apart a dental specific printer, right?
Hmm.
And, you know, the analogy I like to use is going back to the CEREC,
Yeah.
with the crowns and such, right? They had their design software built into the system.
Yep.
So there are some printer companies, dental printer companies, that have that. You can upload a file and get the design back either, you know, same day or next day
Sure.
or whatever, and then you just have to print, right? That's been for a long time the missing link, the roadblock for a lot of dentists, right?
Right.
Now we have software that's much easier to use, right? And we have design services that focus just on that. We have digital labs, right, that focus on just on that. I actually work with one here in Vancouver called Evident. They
Yep.
they they're huge. They support over 60,000 dentists and labs worldwide, just doing design services, right? And it's incredible because you might think that you send your case to your local lab, right? And they're doing the design there. It could be that a company like Evident is actually doing their
Yes.
design for them.
Right.
And I'm going to go back to the whole freedom thing again. Let me let me tell you why I think this is so powerful. Today for a lab to start up, right? They're going to have to buy a lot of equipment.
Right.
design software, and
Mhm.
then hire a digital technician.
Yes.
And that is the most expensive part of the whole process. Digital technicians are, getting paid 100,000 plus these
Yeah.
days, right? So if a mom and pop lab wants to transition to digital or startup, right, that cost for hiring a digital technician can go away if they just use a design service and then just do the manufacturing and the finishing, which is critical, I think, for the process of digital dentistry and manufacturing. So that's where I think that design lab comes in, not just to help dentists, but also lab technicians who want to start their own practice, or their own laboratories and mom and pops, to
Yeah.
keep those mom and pop companies viable as well, to compete with some of the bigger labs and give more personalized service, right? Because the finishing is really what makes the difference there, right? So, the design process has gotten easier, certainly, and it's gotten even easier now. We're getting a lot of AI built into the design
Right.
process. Softwares
Which
are
has
going
changed
AI
things
heavily, right?
incredibly. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've been privy to some of the things that are coming down the pike in the next
Hmm.
year, and it's really incredible. Um, we've been using for about a year and a half now, for example, AI bone segmentation software, right? Which is extremely accurate. Whereas I would have to send up to, a technician to have that done, and it would
Sure.
take about a week to get back. It's done literally in a few minutes with the click of a button.
Wow.
And we've been using that for about a year and a half, and there hasn't been, a single case that it hasn't worked flawlessly for us. It's been incredible. Now we're seeing that come to crown design and smile
Hmm.
design and so on, which is a little more challenging because then you have to think about the aesthetic eye that
Yes.
that is hard to replicate on a machine.
Art
So
is
the
hard to do
inputs,
for a computer.
yeah, so the inputs are still going to be there from the human being, from the dentist, from the technicians, and so on, to give that beautiful,
Yes.
design, which is critical for the end result. But that's coming along very rapidly, as with all the technology. The AI is definitely moving along in that realm in a big
Well, and
way.
you think about it, Rick. I mean, are there cases that you need to send out for a custom shade? I mean, I've got a great local lab that's 10 minutes from my office. And if I do, which I don't like to do, but sometimes you have to do a single maxillary anterior. And I always send those folks to the lab. And I know
Yep.
that when I get the result back, it always looks, or 99% of the time, you put some clear bonding in there and you're good to go. Um, so there's always going to be those kind of things, but not, when people talk, well, AI can't do, it's like, for maybe heck, AI could even do 50% of the
Yeah.
artistic. That's probably good enough for a lot of what we need to do, unless it
Yeah.
requires, certain customization. I've told this story before, but I think it was last year, a couple of years ago, Coca-Cola made an ad and they decided we're just going to AI generate everything. We're not going to use actors and actresses. And what they got back as far as feedback was kind of funny because people said, I don't know what you did, but the people look creepy. They don't look
Yeah.
real. There's something kind of edgy. And it's just, I think that's just because computers don't have a soul. And, that's kind of what the human being puts into it. But at the same time, not everything needs that, and
Yeah.
so I say, let the machines do what they can do. I mean, why not?
Absolutely. We have, like you said, if you need to do a custom shade or something like that, that human part is still not replicable, and it won't
Right.
be, for a very long time. I never say never, of
Yep.
course, but
I hate
um,
always and never. So we're in the
yeah.
right in the
So,
same
for
family.
example, we got into milling, and we've been doing custom shades for our patients
Mhm.
for over a decade now, right? And I realized that I wasn't very good at it, right? The lab, the communication was an issue. If
Right.
we were sending patients to the lab to get it
Mhm.
done right, okay? But now we are able to do it very, very well in-house, right? But there's always a caveat. When I give lectures and I show the cases, and we've got custom shading for that maxillary central incisor on the implant that looks, just perfect
Right.
compared to the adjacent tooth. And I say I have a secret weapon, and that secret weapon is Zulia. Zulia is our assistant
I
who
love it.
has that aesthetic eye that
Yes.
can do the custom shading. And I'll sit a patient in a chair for an hour and she'll work to get that shade right. Okay. But here's the thing, if you're not willing to invest in Azulia or
Right. Or to
do it
find
yourself,
Azulia.
and is it really worth it for a lot of dentists? You have to ask yourself that question,
Right.
right? Now, we had patients, a big part of our practice was patients who would fly in for treatment.
Hmm.
So, they would come in and they'd be there for a couple of days and it had to get done. So
Right.
we made that investment, right? To get that done. As a matter of fact, this weekend, Dr. Shu and Zuli are flying to Chicago to go to a ceramic staining course, right?
Wow.
That's the kind
Yeah.
of investment that you have to make in your people if you
Yes.
want to do that. Now, again, you don't have to, right? They're local mom and pop labs have been doing
Right.
this for decades, and they're good at it, and that's what we used before, right? But like with anything else, if you want to do a certain thing, you have to be willing to make the investment to get to that level, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, um, you know, and I say we've been doing it for a decade. That's probably about how long Zuli has been with us. So,
Well, and it's interesting because when you talk about the digital labs, and I think that's such a key component of this because I'm sure you hear it too. People will talk to you and say, you know what, yeah, it's cool. And I can see, like overnight things or same day things or, soon things, but I don't want to be my own lab technician. And I mean, my response to that is I don't want to be either. And I'm really not. I
right,
either
right,
well train and turn it over to team, or this whole idea of the digital lab is just great because it's like, okay, send everything out to a digital lab, let them do it, still manufactured in house. And if you ever do get the bug, now you've got everything you need. Take one easy case that, the patient doesn't care if it's going to take you a couple of weeks to figure it out. And even if you were doing that and you got to a point where you're like, I just can't do this, you can still send it out. I mean, it's a
sure,
tremendous, it's a great service, but I think it's also what I want doctors to know. It's a tremendous safety net because you're never in it by yourself. You've always got
yeah,
somebody that can step in and do it for you if you need it. It's like doing a difficult extraction in dental school. I
right,
knew if I really got in the soup, I could raise my hand and one of the surgeons would come over and boom, boom, you know, fix whatever it was that I just didn't think I could fix. But
hmm
having that as the parachute, the safety net, I think is a terrific thing. And I want to make sure that doctors realize we've got these labs that you can depend on to do that kind of stuff for you and do it really well and do it all the time. They've made all those mistakes. They know what they're doing.
yeah. In life, the saying goes, everybody needs a good auto mechanic, right?
Yeah,
That you can trust, right?
right.
Every dentist needs a local lab, I think, that they can rely
Yes.
on, right?
Yeah.
In dentistry, no man is an island. And, if you're going to do root canals, for example, your own root
Hmm.
canals, right? You're going to have an endodontist that you need to work with for those cases that you don't do or don't
Yep.
want to tackle, the complex ones and such. And,
Absolutely.
so you have a core group of specialists that you work with as well, even if you're doing some of it yourself, right? Same concept. And, I always tell dentists, if you're going to do your own root canals or do your own implants, whatever, right? Every now and then, send that endodontist an easy case, right?
Go. Yeah.
Because you know what? They don't want to do all the tough cases all day long either. We're all human beings,
Yep. They want to do a maxillary central sometimes.
Sure, but keep that relationship going. There's enough work for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk a bit about the whole resin part of things now, Rick. I know that you were one of the, gosh, if you weren't the first, you were one of the very first that used the Pactent resins. Um, how did that come about, and what do you think of them?
So, I started using the Pactent resins just because I test a lot of different resins. I
Hmm.
work with a bunch of different companies, and I realized something that was different about the Rodan line of resins. From the beginning, they were focused on aesthetics, right? And making things their restorative line of resins especially, right? Aesthetic. And to this day, I think they have the best aesthetic resins. It's more what we were expecting from a dental product, right?
Right. Yep.
A lot of the early restorative resins, they look plasticky, right? They
Yes.
look fake. You couldn't stain them properly, et cetera, et cetera. Um, uh, Pactent basically focused on that as their core value in
Hmm.
their resin line. So when I saw that and saw what their focus was, I jumped on that right away, right? And they were also innovating very rapidly. They were taking feedback from their users and innovating rapidly. You'll see, for example, their denture-based 2 resin. I see you have a bottle there on your counter.
There it is.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So, that, for example, we gave them feedback and they improved it. And a lot of the early denture-based resins, for example, were not really good for long-term use. And theirs
They
was
were
the first
fragile.
that
Yeah.
I thought we were able to use for quote unquote permanent dentures,
Right.
you know. So they did take a lot of feedback. They innovated on their products, but the focus from the beginning was to make restorative resins that were more aesthetic. And we've done some beautiful work with the restorative resins. Their veneer resin is formulated specifically for doing, same day veneers. And we've
I've
got
seen
some,
some of your cases that you
yeah,
posted on the Facebook group. They're
we've
amazing.
got some of that, some new stuff coming out with that. And then on top of that, they realized that they needed a system to do the staining. And a
Hmm.
lot of, you're going to print, but like any material in dentistry, whether you mill it or print it or whatever, you got
Right.
to do some finishing. Whether you make it
Mhm.
chair side, you got to do some finishing on it to get it to last, even for temporaries,
Yes.
and make it aesthetic. Because patients don't want to walk around with chiclets, looking
Yeah.
teeth. So they developed a line of stains and glazes that were specific for 3D printing.
As a matter
The,
of
the
fact, people are
previous,
going to
I think
think
you've
it's a
got one there
setup.
as well. Yeah, the palette stain kit.
It's not a setup. I just happen to have that on my
Yeah,
desk.
well, a good product. So now they have the version 2. So one of the things was the stains that were available were
Hmm.
really stained for composites, right?
Yes.
For
Yeah.
intraoral composites, and they were not really designed for 3D printing materials.
Which
So
is a
they
different
developed
type
a
of resin.
specific protocol for 3D
Yeah.
printed resins. Now, one of the issues, of course, with 3D printed materials is getting that final layer to be nice and hard and glossy. And we're
Hmm.
using nitrogen curing for that. And more
Okay.
recently, Pacten innovated and developed the nitrogen-free glaze,
Yeah. The glaze
which is
into
just
free.
a
Yeah.
huge breakthrough that you don't have to have a nitrogen gas in your curing oven to get the
Right.
similar finish. And that's changed. That's been a game changer for us. Because having to buy a different curing unit and also have a tank of nitrogen,
Right.
uh, you know, we did it because again, we made that investment because we wanted to have that
Yep.
level of quality to finish our products, our 3D printed products. But now you don't have to have that for your restorative materials and even your denture bases. The nitrogen free glaze can be cured with a handheld curing light. You know, it's really been a game changer for the 3D printing industry, I think.
Well, and I
And
think, like you mentioned, dentures especially. Gosh, when I was trained, as probably the same thing when you were trained, is we finished and polished all our own
yep,
dentures when we were in school. And oh my gosh, trying to get that really, I don't know, professional grade or whatever I call it, final polish on a denture, that's a lot of work. And I agree with
yep,
you. The glaze into free is just phenomenal. I mean,
yeah,
those things come out, they look like somebody's, like a brand new card that's been waxed. They're
yep,
just so shiny, so smooth. It's amazing stuff, and it stays on.
yeah. So again, you said that we had to hand finish and polish those. Well,
Hmm.
guess what? I didn't want to do that. So, we always sent it to the lab to get those
Yeah.
done for
Yep.
dentures. And when Pacdent was, I'll give a little inside story on
Yeah,
this.
please.
When Pacdent was trying to decide how to finish dentures, for example, and restorative materials, they were talking about developing a polishing kit, right?
Hmm.
And my advice was, no dentist wants to do that. We don't want to sit there and polish things,
Right.
right? Even polishing temporary crowns and veneers and things like that, we're probably going to end up breaking them and have to remake them. So I
So
said, we
true.
need a simpler technique. And
Yeah.
it took them almost 2 years to come up with the nitrogen-free glaze. But boy, they hit the home run. I see you're holding a baseball there. They hit
Yeah,
their home run with that
they did.
that product. And I hope they did take my advice on that. In the end, they did do what I wanted from that, but
Well, let me just
it
say
didn't
right
make
now, for
sense to do.
everybody that's touched that product, thank you for
Yeah,
that
it
idea.
it didn't make sense to me as a clinician. We already had put a lot of time and effort into doing 3D
Sure.
printing and training our assistants and all that. But a busy clinical practice, you want something that's going to work quick, get you
Mhm.
to the end result faster, and it's a really good product. I really like it. Yeah.
I'm glad, it is amazing to me. One of the things that I've always been so impressed with in dentistry is, and I consider myself lucky, and you're lucky too, because we get to kind of walk on both sides. We get to see patients and we practice and we get those relationships, but we also get to walk on the industry side and see what happens on the other side of the mirror. And the folks that do the R&D and the chemistry and all that work, they are such smart people. They're so good at what they do, and these ideas like the glaze into free and the palette staining and stuff is just, you know, years ago I toured a fur manufacturing plant, and when I went home, I felt guilty because those people that made those burrs, even the people that were running the machines that were making the burrs, they were so quality focused. They'd pick them up and look at them under like 50x magnification, and check for defects and everything. And I thought, I pick those things up. I go on a tooth for 60 seconds. I throw it in the trash. I never thought about how much dedication and passion goes into making this that we get the privilege of using, and then we just throw away. We don't even think about it sometimes.
I know. There's a famous person, I forget who it was, that said that when technology, something to the effect of, uh, high level technology is akin to magic. Because we don't see all the what goes on in the background, and it
Yes.
appears to us like this is magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so they're way smarter people than me
And
developing
me.
these products.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, you have to have a company culture, right?
Right.
That is being run by people who are interested in dentists and improving the lives of dentists and their patients. And not all companies, as you and I know,
Hmm.
right, are looking at it
Yes.
that way. They're either engineering focused or profit focused.
Hmm.
Let's be frank, right?
Sure.
And it's not always. We've seen so many things come and go, right, in
Right.
dentistry. But the idea is that if you're working with a company that is focused on the end result to improve the lives of dentists and you can and patients, and you can find that company that has that culture, that's a company you want to support.
Totally
Yeah,
agree with that. I've always said my whole career that I don't care if you're the CEO of, some big corporation somewhere that, is in the dental field in some regard or whatever, or you're in the trenches like we are. The bottom of or the end of the day, the bottom thing is we work for the patients.
yeah.
It's got to be good for the patients. If it's not good for the patients, then it's not good for anybody. It's not good for the industry. And I agree with you. Finding companies that are doing the right things for the right reasons. Yeah, I'm thrilled when I get a chance to do that, and I stick with them. It's just, they deserve that.
Absolutely. That's why we went to dental school as well.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, I didn't go to dental school to do 3D printing,
right,
or milling, or even implants, right? We went there to because we wanted to have a fulfilling career, contributing back to society,
right.
contributing to making people happier and healthier, right? At least I don't know any dentist I've ever met that didn't have those goals there.
Yeah.
When you went to dental school.
Well,
And
and kind of along those
listen,
lines too,
yeah.
since you've now partnered with Medidenta on your whole Ferguson line of accessories and stuff, a little bit why I'm sure there were a lot of people knocking on your door wanting to partner with you on this. What was the
Yeah.
big thing about Medidenta that made you pull the trigger for that?
So actually, I've been using Medidenta products for a long time, back 30 years. This
Mhm.
company's been around a long time.
Yes, it
And
has.
and going back to 1997 when I first opened the practice, started a practice, I didn't have the finances to buy all the most expensive
Right.
equipment. So we bought handpieces from Medidenta and all of that. And the company is still shares that same culture, to be value based, you know, and that's why I created the whole accessories line,
Hmm.
anyways, was to make it accessible to more people. So Sean Ryan over at Medidenta, great
Yeah,
guy. You know,
he's
um,
been on the
yeah,
podcast.
yeah, hey, great. I had the opportunity to spend some time over there, and I'll be going back as you are
Hmm.
giving courses at Medidenta. So they're shaped. I was really happy that they shared that culture. And again, goes back to that culture thing. Yeah, of course, companies are interested in profit and bringing products to the market and all that, but we want to make sure that the value is there, and that's again why I created my line of products, and they're happy to continue that passion as well for being a value based product. So that's
Yeah.
why Medidenta,
Okay.
frankly. Yeah.
And I think it's cool because I didn't realize how much they had until I actually was out there and I got a tour a few years ago. And I got a chance to see the warehouse and I got a chance to meet the people that, work on their repairs because they repair all kinds of equipment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Even to the people, fill the orders, people that pull the orders. Everybody there is just they're on board. They're the kind of people that, you could just hang out with and chat with. And yeah, it's a great company with a great culture and an amazing history. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's funny in the world, I wish I could remember. Here's another quote, but I can't remember who said it. Somebody once said, "It's not smart to pay too much, but it's also not smart to pay too little." And
Right.
their stuff is like right in that butter zone of where,
Yeah, they've
you
they've
know,
got the balance. You mentioned that
yes,
their employees are I noticed that people seem to be happy to be at work. They're
yes.
excited about what they're doing. And again, that goes back to the culture of the management there and
Mhm.
being able to, satisfy their customers. Yeah,
Well, and
so
if anybody that's watching or listening to this and you want to see what it's all about, Rick and I are both doing some courses out there this year. So
yeah,
they're held in the facility. So if you want to come over and meet some of the people and see what's going on, they'll be happy to take you, and Rick and I'll try and educate you a little bit along the way. Um, but yeah, that's awesome. Do you know when your next course out there is, Rick? Just out of curiosity, I don't. I know you've got one coming up.
it's in November.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Go on the Medidenta website, click on education on the education tab, and you'll
Hmm.
see both of our courses. So yeah,
Yeah. And there are others too. They get a lot of good educators that come out there
yeah.
on a regular basis. So yeah, that's a good point. Click on education from their website and take a look. Let me We're getting close to the magic time here, Rick, but let me ask you, as somebody that really knows this whole thing of 3D printing and digital dentistry inside and out, forwards and backwards, where do you see it going in the near future? Maybe not 15 years, but maybe near future, like 5 years. Do you have any kind of thoughts in mind on that?
So I think we are at a tipping point right now. where the products are a good enough quality, right, that
Yes.
we're going to see a fast adoption of 3D printing products. We're
Mhm.
going to see changing paradigms, right? We're going to see more 3D printing, temporary restorations, for
Mhm.
example, restorative materials, inlays, onlays, crowns, things like that, right? We're going to see better materials coming down the pike. I'm not saying we're replacing milling just yet,
Right.
right? But we'll be able to do more. And for example, you've got a bottle of rapid ceram right there, I
Yes,
believe. Yeah.
I do.
And you couldn't have staged it any better,
Yeah,
right?
we did not set this up. I promise we didn't set this up.
I, yeah, it's incredible because the question leads me to rapid ceram, for example, right?
Okay.
Rapid ceram. So there's a tipping point where we're going to be doing more and more and more, right?
Hmm.
And you can always wait on buying into the technology. People are
Right.
like, well, let me wait till it gets better, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what's really interesting right now is we have 3D printers that are good and reliable and high enough resolution that the 3D printer problem has been solved, in my opinion. Right? There's
I
still
agree with
minor
you
improvements you're going to
100%.
see, right?
Yeah.
But the materials still are undergoing more improvements all the time. So, for
Right.
example, rapid ceram, right? It's a restorative resin, ceramic filled restorative resin that we're finding new uses for ever since it came out, right? And it's beating my expectations. I didn't believe we could use it for full arch. It's actually fantastic for full arch. Um, Things like that. But the main purpose of that resin was to print faster, hence rapid ceram,
Right.
right? But here's the interesting thing about that. It allows you to leverage technology in that a printer that you bought a year ago, there might be a new model that's faster, but the resin allows you to leverage that older printer. When I say older, I mean a year or so
Right.
or two ago.
Yeah.
It will print faster with this new resin, right? So it allows you to extend the life of your initial investment in technology and the actual equipment. So you'll see more of that type of thing happening as well, right? Where you buy into a certain printer family, right? And
Mhm.
it's going to extend the life cycle of that printer. You know, it's been about the life cycle these for the last probably 10 years has been every couple of years you got to buy a new printer, right?
Correct.
We've reached a point now where they're high enough resolution, the quality and the speed are there, and as now what we're looking at is more product as far as the resin development, and you'll see lots of new resins coming down the pike as well. That's what I see in the near future, and that allows us to do more applications in dentistry. In 15 years, boy, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's
I'm not smart enough to be able to predict what's going to happen in 15 years. You're going to have more additive manufacturing processes coming down the pike rather than just resin-based technology. I think there'll
mhm.
be more additive manufacturing coming
You know,
as well as subtractive. I think there's still life in that technology.
yeah, I think there is too. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. I think what we're going to see is, I like you, I grew up with film. And I built a new office in 2007, bought some land, built from the ground up. And when we designed that office space, we didn't even put a dark room in it. There was no space designated for the dark room because we didn't need it. And I really think that what we'll probably see, maybe now if people, are building a new space is that dental lab room that we have. You may not be doing crowns in house, but we've all got a place to pour up models and do all those kind of things. I think that's either going to be smaller or it's going to be a lot cleaner because it's going to be
Yeah.
full of stuff like this. It's not going to be full of
Yeah.
model trimmers and, big Tupperware things full of stone and dust everywhere. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to be as evolutionary or revolutionary as digital was to film, because now it's, digital was to film. Now digital was to plaster, stone, vacuum forms, all
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
It'll definitely be cleaner. We are running out of time. I think we're getting to the end of
We
this,
are.
so I'll kind of sum this up
Sure,
as
please.
far as going on what you just said. Our
Yeah.
processes are changing, right? We
Hmm.
went from film to digital X-rays, and you couldn't pay me to go back,
No,
right?
no.
I asked this question in my lectures occasionally to a dentist who made that transition. I said, if I was to take to give you a film processor, right, and you incorporate that back in your practice, what would I have to pay you? $1 million, $2 million, and
Yeah.
nobody ever wants to take that
Yeah,
offer,
nobody
right?
wants that deal.
No.
Absolutely not.
So let me tell you about another dental assistant I had. Her name was Lena.
Okay.
So Lena, remember the first full arch temporary that we printed, right? Now Lena was tasked with making our full arch temporaries,
Okay.
right? And she was good at it. She was
Yeah.
pretty fast. She was good at it, right? But the first one that we 3D printed, right? We printed it to the preps. So our protocol now is we prep the teeth, scan to the, we have a design done ahead of time by
Right.
a design lab, so
Right.
everything is nice and aesthetic, right? And then we can match that to the preps in software like Exocad,
Yep.
and within a few minutes that's ready to be printed. We printed that, right? And we took it over to the patient, and it dropped right in. The margins were like the permanent restorations, right? The tissue health is going to be better, and all
Oh,
Lena
yeah.
had to do was a slight bite adjustment and then cement it in, right? That was a full arch temp. Great. The next day, we had another case like that. So Lena came knocking on my door. I was in my office looking over the case. She came knocking on my door and she said, Dr. Ferguson, we're going to make the temps like we did yesterday, right? We're going to 3D print them, right? And I turned, I said, yes, Lena, we're going to 3D print them. And we haven't looked back, John, right? We never
That's,
made another full arch temp the old way, right? So it was better for the patient, it was better for the dentist, and very importantly, it was better for the assistant. And the assistant was more excited about that than anything we had probably ever done in the practice, right?
yeah.
Because nobody wants to sit there and grind away at things and have to make it aesthetic. And you're under time pressure. With
Yep.
3D printing, we can do it faster, we can do it cleaner, right? Sometimes we'd have to pour up a stone model and you make it on a stone. We don't do that
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
We're going direct. We're going completely modelless, direct to 3D printing with the restoration. So I'll leave on that thought, and with the idea that our paradigms are changing, right? Our processes are changing. And it is more efficient, frankly, and better quality, right? So all of that put together, the future is bright for dentistry and technology.
Super. Well, Rick, thank you. I love your passion. This has been, as it's time has just flown by. So everybody, thanks for watching and listening. I've had a great conversation with Dr. Rick Ferguson. I'm John Flucke, Technology Evangelist, and this is the Technology Evangelist Podcast brought to you by Medidenta. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Bye.